Right, so this is pretty much UFC full men's card predictions, and you can see how much effort they've put into the card. Zero. Because you literally have something, I know it's something small, like Dana White with this poster, it looked like he drew it and he printed it off Google Images, and it just sums up how bad the card is in terms of name value. I'm going to say that, I'm sorry, but the fights will end up turning out to be quite good in my opinion, stylistically. But I just had to say that, just to look at the poster. So anyways, Alatengheili versus Kleydson Rodrigues. Who's going to win this fight? For me, you know what? Yep, Alatengheili should win this fight, and I think he's going to win it via decision or late KO. I don't think he'll submit Kleydson Rodrigues, because Rodrigues is this guy from very early. He is very aggressive, and he expends a lot of aerobic endurance. And the reason I'm using that word is because when you come up against a guy like Alatengheili, you do not want to gash yourself out, because this guy takes his time. He's one of those guys who does not rush things. I believe he also fought Song Yadong back in the day when he was young, and he's just one of those guys, and it's at bantamweight, and I believe Kleydson Rodrigues can also fight at flyweight. He's not as big as Alatengheili. He's got quite a thick back, and you can see how strong he is on the ground when he can just get you in a position like half guard, for example. He's quite strong in that position. And I think Kleydson Rodrigues, when he's on the ground, he's always trying to be offensive. He's not always looking to get up. He's looking to like do a submission off his back instead of working waves to get back up to the feet. And I think that's going to benefit Alatengheili, because there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to grapple. And even if he wants to strike, he might lose the first round, because Kleydson Rodrigues' output is very high. It looks like he's very aggressive, but then the alternative is that he slows down. So I'm predicting a 29-28 for Alatengheili, because Alatengheili's got a good left hook on him. He rocked Chad Alanliga with it, because he's very slow in terms of he doesn't rush things. He waits, picks his opportunity, then fires off the hook, puts you up against the cage, wait for you to overcommit, goes for the takedown. So I'm expecting him to go out there and win that fight. Right, here we have the guy who has made me look like an absolute fraud. Abus Magomedov versus Warlley Alves. I'm doing it again. I can't help myself. I'm going with Abus Magomedov to win this fight. And I think against Warlley Alves, this guy's taken a bit of damage in his last fight. How many weeks or months ago? That was 6 months ago. Okay, he took a decent amount of time off and it was brutal. Flying knee, starts coming out with these Street Fighter combos on his head. He's old. Abus Magomedov, they're the same age, and you're going to be like, well, if you're calling him old, you're calling Abus Magomedov old as well. In terms of, I'm saying it because he's been in the UFC for a long time. Probably not the best word to use, but he's been around in this UFC for a long time. He's probably taken a lot of damage when I'm thinking about all the fights he's been in, like that. Warlley Alves probably took a lot out of him physically, not visually, but physically. And I think Abus Magomedov, again, with him, he's got 1 round cardio. So can I really trust him to do it? Yes, I can. And I'm expecting him to go out there just like Ikram did and finish him in the first round, because he's so aggressive. And Warlley Alves, he doesn't always he doesn't always start off the fastest, which makes it even worse, because he's a bit slow, he's a bit fragile, he's waiting, and he will grow into the fight with body kicks. And I think because Abus Magomedov's all about, I need to go out there and finish you in the first round. This matchup stylistically is great, because Warlley Alves isn't a cardio machine. He's not a guy who's going to look to grapple with Abus Magomedov. Abus Magomedov can, but the fact that you've put him against Sean Strickland and Baralho, I have no idea what was going through my mind when I picked him to beat Strickland. I just don't. I really don't. But Chao Baralho, again, dumb pick. But this one here should come through. Warlley Alves, the only way he wins this fight is if Abus Magomedov turns into McKinney and gasses after the first round. Maybe he's like the McKinney of middleweight, where he just gasses himself out. He's a really good first round fighter, but apart from that, debatable. So yeah, I'm going with Abus Magomedov, but I'm not confident whatsoever. And yes, I also forgot to mention, I am going to talk about Tyson Fury and Usyk at the start. Well, not at the start, at the end. But anyways, Oumar versus Tukos. For me, this one isn't an easy fight to predict, because I know Oumar has got all this hype about him. People are saying, oh my God, he looks like John Jones out there. But Tuco Tokkos is also a grappler as well. And you know what happens when you have two grapplers? You put them two together, they end up striking. It happens. But I do think Oumar C is more aggressive in the fact that he's not one of those grapplers who will look to strike relative to the amount of times he'll look to grapple. He's one of those guys who just wants to get straight to work with the grappling. Whereas Tuco Tokkos, he can take his time, because you look at him against Ming Yang Zhang, he got cleaned out. And I know he looks very good because of the power he's got, but I do see Oumar C doing the same thing. I think he's going to KO him in the first round, and I think he's going to do it through grappling. I think he's going to go out there, not mess about on the feet. I know I said when they both cancel out, they both strike, but C's one of those guys where he doesn't mess about on the feet for too long. He's looking for that takedown, and although I believe Tuco Tokkos has got good grappling from what I've seen, this guy here, look at that reach. That is a heavyweight reach. He has some good high kicks. Tuco Tokkos, I think the only thing he may be able to do better than him is box. And even then, I don't trust him after that Min Yang Zhang fight. He can be a bit passive, whereas Oumar C is more aggressive with his approach and doesn't waste time. Tuco Tokkos likes to be a bit more technical and wait for his opportunity. So I think Oumar C is going to go out there, shoot that double leg on Tuco Tokkos, and I don't think Tokkos' chin's going to be able to handle those elbows. I've seen how brutal Oumar C's elbows are. Oh my God, I keep stuttering like crazy, but his elbows, they are very good. And I can see them just coming through his guard and him just shelling up on the ground. God knows who's refereeing the fight. If it's Keith Peterson, they'll probably make it to a decision. If it's any other referee, he'll stop the fight. So I think it'll be a first round KO. Right, Tom Nolan versus Victor Martinez. You had Laura Sanko and other people calling this guy like the Jalen Turner on the Contender. And then when they fought in the UFC on his debut, it's probably the nerves built up with the adrenaline and he just bottled it on the big stage. He's young, 24, against Victor Martinez. Who am I going with to win? I'm going with Tom Nolan, and I know it sounds a bit strange, but I am going to go with a Tom Nolan decision. And my logic behind this is, yes, he might want to come back and get like a KO to put himself and establish himself as still a good fighter to be in the UFC, but I think he might be a bit patient. When you get brutally knocked out like that or chinned, it can make you a bit passive, and I don't know Tom Nolan personally, so I can't sit here and be like, is he going to be more passive or is he going to be more aggressive? But what I can do is make a prediction on what I believe he will do, and I think he might go out there a bit more passive, because I know Victor Martinez embarrassingly got knocked out by Jordan Levitt, and Jordan Levitt, to knock you out, does not look good. This guy has some very low IQ fight decision moves at times, like trying to grapple with Chase Super instead of looking to strike, when his boxing has looked decent at times. Like, he outboxed Paddy Pimblett at times on the feet, but he's a grappler at the end of the day who's not really known for KOing anybody. And he KO'd Victor Martinez, and it was shocking because it was like kneeing him. It was like Muay Thai and then doing the splits in him. Like, that's just pure pain for that guy watching that fight back. But I think Tom Nolan's got good kicking. He's tall for a lightweight. Ignacio Bahamondes type of vibes. His striking's quite slick. It wasn't the Contender. If he can work the body of Victor Martinez early and then try and slow him down and then lower his guard and then start working them kicks, I think he can win this fight by KO. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to be very passive, chew up the legs of Martinez, back him up against the cage and look to clinch. I think we might see that a few times in this fight, because Jordan Levitt was working in the clinch at times as well. Not for that long, because it didn't last that long, but that's what he did. Well, not in the clinch, but it was next to the cage when he finished him. So if he doesn't want to clinch with him, I can see him doing something similar to what Jordan Levitt did. But make sure his back's not on the cage. Do not stand flat-footed. Always be moving around, because this guy can take your head off. Because he isn't just some shocking fighter. He has got power. And any guy with power, when it's two strikers, it's more likely for a guy to get a fluke knockout than a guy to have a fluke grappling. That just doesn't happen. You wouldn't see a guy like who's not a... I'm trying to think of a guy who's a striker who would just go out and out grapple the grappler. It just doesn't happen. Whereas you can have a striker who you might not think is better than the other striker land a fluky punch and knock them out. Whereas in grappling and jiu-jitsu, that's rare. It just doesn't really happen. So yeah, I'm going with Tom Nolan decision. Right, Adrian Yanez versus Vinicius Salvador. It's actually sad. Even though it was 2 losses, like, he was out of the mix already, and he looked promising after that fight against, what was his name? Tony Kelly, that was it. He put his middle finger up after, but this is a great stylistic matchup for him because both of them cannot take leg kicks or they do not like them. But Adrian Yanez, for me, I don't think he's going to knock out Vinicius Salvador. I think it's a decision. I think this is a fight where he's going to make Vinicius Salvador look silly because the way Vinicius Salvador fights is reckless. It's just swinging, hoping, like swinging, trying to hit and land, and if it can't, he can be taken down and bullied. But Yanez isn't going to grapple. He's a boxer. So I can just see him picking him apart with body shots, and maybe he might have a good first round because I think back to that fight of Randy Costa. Look how close Randy Costa got. He's out of the UFC now, but to finishing Adrian Yanez in that fight. And I believe that was in the first round. I might be wrong, but it was early. And I think Vinicius Salvador could do that because of his recklessness. Although there's no technique to his game. Look at Derek Lewis. I'm not going to say he's got as much power as him because that would be stupid, but I'm just saying, just because you're not too technical, you can get fluky shots that land on the chin. So I think he might be able to tag Yanez, but it won't knock him out. You might catch him with a good shot, and then Yanez will wake up and be like, right, let me start fighting like a boxer by jabbing him and moving. But the only thing I worry about again in this fight is Yanez don't move his head for a boxer. That's quite strange. And Vinicius Salvador, although he doesn't either, he's got loads of power. And if you don't move your head off the centre line when you're throwing a simple jab, and he goes to swing like an overhand, that can land on your chin. And Salvador has got that power to knock you out. So I expect Yanez to be quite smart out there and not have to worry about takedowns and leg kicks and just go out there and outbox him to a decision. Especially working that body, because if you can work that body, he's going to overswing, miss your head whilst gassing himself out from missing the shot and from the body shot that Yanez has initially pretty much thrown. So yeah. Right, Ramiz Brahimaj versus Themba Gorimbo. Do not be fooled by this guy's record, please. You look at that and think he's got no chance because Gorimbo's isn't great either. And I think moderate favourite for a win that was pretty much like Ricky Simone against Uriah Faber when he got cleaned out by an overhand right out of nowhere. I wouldn't just look at that and think, right, he's going to knock out Brahimaj. I don't think he will. I think if he's going to win, it will be by a decision. But I'm going with Ramiz Brahimaj to win by submission. And I think he can do it in the first round. One thing that Themba Gorimbo can do not be fooled about that first fight, is make poor decisions on the ground. I'm glad that he's in a better financial situation, which is good to hear. But I think we're all getting caught up in that whole situation and forgetting how... Look back at the last 2 fights before you look at the fight with Pete Rodrigues, which was pretty much... It was a good knockout. But there's not a lot of things in there that would make me think, wow, he's going to beat this guy. Takashi Sato was one of the most sloppiest fights I've seen. Shooting him for takedowns with no setup, leaving his chin exposed where he could have been submitted, but Sato was not great himself, so I didn't really expect him to win that Sato. But AJ Fletcher was a great example of that. Not really setting up the takedowns, being very reckless on the ground, moving into positions which is now allowing him to get submitted. And I believe he might have got dropped by Fletcher and then he jumped into that guillotine. Ramiz is extremely good at jiu-jitsu. No other win by him is by anything else. It's a submission. And he's going to look to grapple with Gorimbo. And I think Gorimbo, knowing his fighting decisions, is going to engage with it. Because I think Ramiz is going to time Gorimbo quite well. I can see Themba Gorimbo, because he got that knockout again, he might get a confidence in his power and go out there swinging for the finish. I think an overhand again. And Ramiz Brahimaj has not got that great striking defense, but I can see him anticipating the fact that because Gorimbo's got that good knockout, he's going to want to look to do that again. So as he goes for the overhand right, I see Ramiz pretty much shooting on that double leg, which he likes to do. And he's got good transitioning skills where if he takes you down, he's got a good way of getting to your back, Pantoja type of style, but not as elite as his. He doesn't seatbelt you. He will shoot for that double leg, get his hook in whilst you're trying to turn, slide his hand underneath your body, and then get his hands around your neck. And knowing Themba Gorimbo, he's going to overswing and give away these takedown attempts. And I can see once he's got him on the ground, although Gorimbo's got jiu-jitsu, his jiu-jitsu has not impressed me in the UFC yet. And I've also seen him in other promotions in dangerous areas on the ground which again, he's not making the right decision making. So I know it doesn't really look good when you're looking at this guy's record, and even though Gorimbo's isn't great either, I think this is the type of guy who has a good matchup against this guy, because that was a good knockout he got. I'll give him that, but it's not something he does frequently. And yeah, this is at welterweight. Remember, Pete Rodrigues is a small welterweight. He shouldn't even really be fighting there. Go back to lightweight. And yeah, Brahimaj, he got dropped and schooled by Court McGee, but you've got to remember, Court McGee's a guy who's never been submitted, who his striking isn't that good, but his pressure and his wrestling is good. Brahimaj, to me, is more of a jiu-jitsu than a wrestler. But because his jiu-jitsu looks so good at times, you might think he's a wrestler, because once he gets someone down, it looks like he can't get up because he can just lock in a submission or something. But yeah, I'm going with Brahimaj. Khaos Williams versus Carlston Harris. Who am I going to go with? I'm going with Carlston Harris, and this is the hard bit. I'm thinking in my brain decision, but I'm thinking about when you put these two together, this fight has got a knockout written all over it. But what I think Carlston Harris is going to do is, I think he's going to hurt him and look for a submission. So it's about, what do I think he's going to do? Do I think he's going to KO Khaos Williams? Or do I think... You know what? Khaos Williams has a good chin. I think he's going to go for a submission. It's a really hard guy to finish. I think round 2. Right. Khaos Williams is one of those guys who... He is carried by his power and athleticism, where he can just walk straight forward and knows that if he can just land that one strike on you, you could both be in an exchange. But if he's the guy who can land on you, and even if you land a shot on him, he's less likely to go down. He can take a punch, but it was the last fight. I could argue he should have lost that. And that was almost a year ago. That can't be right. It might be, but I just remember it like it was about 5 months ago. And I think Carlston Harris, his last fight against... it was the last fight against Jeremiah Wells. That was very lucky and clutch, because you're down almost 3 rounds and then you're able to snatch up a dash choke. And this all came because he was being out-grappled. Khaos Williams isn't going there to out-grapple. He's looking for a knockout. And because he's looking for a knockout, Carlston Harris is another guy who doesn't mind fighting you down the centre. And it's another guy where he can't outsize him, Khaos Williams, like he could do to some other opponents, because Carlston Harris isn't that short. And 6 foot's not short anyway. But I do see Carlston Harris going out there and looking to kick very heavy. A lot of kicks down the centre, front kicks, because Khaos Williams is coming straight forward. He doesn't come off to the side. He doesn't use angles to hit you. He just rushes you straight forward. So I can see him getting caught with a few kicks to the body, which will slow him down. And that's another thing. He slows down, especially in the 3rd round. And I think Carlston Harris, look at how he got that finish in the 3rd round over Jeremiah Wells. He's the type of guy where he can come forward and look to take you down, use the clinch. But what do I think is going to happen? I think Carlston Harris is going to drop Khaos Williams in the fight, because they're both going to be in the exchange. And because Carlston Harris has got a very loopy and a type of, I don't know what word to describe his striking, like his boxing. It's very unorthodox, punches coming over the top. They're very hard to see, and he lands them specifically. He can on the temple or on the forehead area, like the hooks to the temples and stuff, but he doesn't always throw them. And I can see him catching him, putting him off balance, and then snatching up a submission, because Khaos Williams is the type of guy where you might drop him, which is very rare in itself, but then to finish him with the punches, very hard. So I think he's going to drop him, jump onto his back, snatch up a rear naked choke, and get the submission in round 2. So I think it'll be a wild fight at the start, and Williams will slow down because of his output and get submitted. Right, Lerone Murphy versus Edson Barboza. Said it the wrong way around, but oh well. Who do I think is going to win the fight? I'm going with Lerone Murphy, and I believe he actually will knock out Edson Barboza. Not in the 1st round, but I think round 2 is when it will happen. Edson Barboza, for me, has turned into that guy where it's a hit or miss with him. If he has an off night, he can get smashed. And looking back at his last fight, that was a great comeback. He got arguably, or almost a 10-7 in that by Sodiq Yusuff. And Sodiq Yusuff has no chin. We've all seen that. But it doesn't mean he can't box. But Lerone Murphy has got quite good boxing and is quite underrated. Like Josh Culibao, he is a fast striker. but he was able to mix in the grappling as well as his good striking as itself, and he was able to get the win. And I see against a guy like Edson Barboza, I think he's really going to grapple with him. I think the first round, he was going to try and slow Edson Barboza down by working the body with kicks, because you're acting like Lerone Murphy can't kick as well. Not as good as Barboza, but when you're mixing in grappling as well, Edson Barboza can fade in fights. He had a good comeback in his last fight against Elite Usyk. But again, Usyf's cardio is a bit suspect. Whereas Lerone Murphy, I think his cardio is good. Like, look at how he hurt Josh Culibao badly with that body shot. He can do the same thing to Barboza, but he's not one guy where he's just going to resort to working the body and like keeping it on the feet. No. He's going to mix in the grappling as well. So that's why I see when they get to the second round, I think he's going to start mixing up these grappling transitions and look to use ground and pound. I actually think that Lerone Murphy is going to finish Edson Barboza on the ground with punches. A bit like how Giga Chikadze finished him. And again, 2 losses, they're not bad when you look at it. Giga Chikadze and Bryce Mitchell, when he's coming up against these guys who look like they're getting a bit of momentum, he can beat them. But Lerone Murphy's one of those guys where he's been underrated for a long time. Look at the guys he's fought already. Gabriel Santos looked quite good in the first round in that fight, but then ends up falling off. Makwan Amirkhani, you could argue he should win that, otherwise questions are being asked. But then when you're looking at fights like Douglas Silva de Andrade, I don't know if he's in the UFC anymore, but they're good wins. The only questionable fight was that Zabira Tukigov, but that was because of grappling, and it was his debut. This is his first 5-rounder. But again, Ricardo Ramos, ground and pound. I think we're not understanding that this guy can grapple, and on the ground, he has got power in terms of like, you've got those fighters who are on the ground, they throw punches that don't do that much damage, and they're light, and they want to set up submissions. He's one of those guys where he won't submit him because he ain't got submissions, but he has got power to finish people with grounded strikes, and I think that's what he will do. Or you never know, he might go out there full, turn into Ben Askren and start grappling the whole time and not even look to strike. You never know, but that's what I think. Edson Barboza is getting a bit old now. He's still got it. The knees could cause problems. His kicking could cause problems to the leg, the low calf kick. But if he dares to throw spinning kicks and give away his back, he's going to get taken down to the ground. And once he hits the ground, Murphy looks a bit stronger than him. He looks bigger than him. I think he'll beat him up on the ground. So I am going with Lerone Murphy to KO Edson Barboza in the second round. I can see why you think Edson Barboza, because he's still got it after a good comeback. But I'm sorry, I just think Lerone Murphy is one of those guys where he's going to win this and put himself in the mix more. Because you don't really hear people mention this guy's name a lot. I wish he fought Nathaniel Wood. But anyways, yeah. So, right, Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. Who am I going with? And no, I'm not just saying it because he's undefeated, because both of them are undefeated. But I'm going with Tyson Fury to win this fight via decision. And I'm going to tell you why. Before you go on about Ngannou, he should have won that fight, which I don't think he did. I think he just lost by 1 round. I said that. You can go back and watch the video if you really want, if you care to anyway. But Alexander Usyk, for me, this is a thing where I believe he is just too small to beat a guy like Tyson Fury. If they were both the same weight, in terms of like, Fury was going to come a bit bigger into this fight, and Usyk was a bit taller, and he could match the frame of a Fury, I believe he would beat him, because technically he's a better boxer. He does a lot of things better, like he can switch the stance, so can Fury, but he's got like better head movement than Fury. And you might argue you're wrong, because look at that fight against Otto Warlley and Tom Schwarz, where you were seeing him on the ropes, moving his head and stuff like that. But I'm talking about when they're both fighting down in the centre. You see things that Alexander Usyk do, like when he was fighting Joshua could not find the range whatsoever. He had to resort to the body, and Joshua's not just a body puncher. He wants to hunt for that head. And Alexander Usyk was just moving his head off the centre line, and he was just struggling. The only fight which made him look a bit doubts about him was the Derek Chisora fight, because we all know Derek Chisora is a journeyman. But apart from that, he slowed him down, Usyk, and he won that fight. No, it weren't a robbery. But Tyson Fury, for me, after watching that fight with Dubois and Usyk, that's of main concern for me. Body shots. Fury being bigger, he hits hard, he likes to work the body low, and if he doesn't want to work the body low, he'll work the uppercuts. And I can see him landing these short uppercuts to the body that he might not knock out Usyk with punches, which I don't think he'd do. But there is a chance that he could stop him via body shot and put him onto a knee. But knowing Usyk, he'll get back up to his feet. So I think it'll be a fight where Usyk will be knocked down in this fight, but not the type of knockdown you're thinking. It will be a shot to the body. And I just don't think Usyk's got the power to drop Fury. The only way I see him beating Fury is if Fury starts off very slow and Usyk is able to just get into his rhythm and just jab him to the body and keep moving for 12 rounds, which there is a possibility that he can do because he's shorter, he's more agile. His movement and his footwork, to me, is better than Fury's, even though Fury's got very good footwork. It's a very good match fight, and near even in a Fury fight is rare. But because of the Ngannou, I think it's making people be brainwashed by, right, Fury isn't all that good. Which he is, but he is very overrated. I know it's undefeated, but again, look at how many times they fight a year. Like, it's not great, very inactive. And if he's going to have a fight, it'll be against some journeyman. If it's not going to be for a big fight for Fury. Like, he just cares about the money. We all know this. He'll say he doesn't, but he does. But for me, Fury size is going to beat Usyk. And not only that, another thing that he does very well is the feints. I think Usyk is going to bait on these feints. Oh my God, why do I sound Scottish at times? And when he bites onto the feints, this is going to allow Tyson Fury to get these moments where he's going to lie on top of him. He's a very dirty boxer, and that's going to benefit him. You are bigger than Usyk. Usyk doesn't like being hit to the body because they can be painful. I know it was just below the line, but still, it didn't look good. And then you've got this 300-pound man. It's an exaggeration, by the way, but in cage, I don't know what he's going to be. Weighing on top of you, leaning on top of you over the ropes. And the referee always allows him to get away with this. And like throwing these short punches, which they don't look heavy, but it builds up when you're doing it for over 12 rounds. Well, not over, I mean over 10 rounds, you sit there and you're lying on top of your opponent and you're just draining all of their energy by carrying all of his weight. And remember, he weighs way bigger than Fury. No, way bigger than Usyk. That's going to slow him down as well. So I can see it being a fight where he just breaks Usyk down. And we haven't seen it often because he's one of those guys where he's tough. He can take a shot and keep coming forward. But I think it's I'm sorry to keep repeating it, but the size for me is huge. A huge factor. This guy's a cruiserweight. And Tony Bellew started off all right against Usyk and faded. But Fury's not a guy where I believe he will fade against a guy like Usyk. Fury, the main concern I have for him is him getting outboxed. And even then, I think the power of Fury is not going to knock him out, but those body shots will slow him down. And even them shots to the head, I can see him cutting up Usyk. And for Usyk, I can just see him bruising Fury. I can't see him landing, like, move his head off the centre line, overhand right knockout. It's just not who Usyk is. So Usyk, for me, wins it by decision, or Fury will win by KO or decision. I do not see Usyk winning by KO. But there is a chance that Usyk might win by a decision. And the odds on a draw are actually quite good as well, which I was surprised about. But anyways, maybe they might want to rig it and do another one in Saudi again. There are conspiracy theories that are going on, but I'm not agreeing with that. So, yeah, that's what I'm going with. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.